So we have a very interesting panel. We have two bureaucrats, very distinguished in their own rights, and have done some remarkable work even in Nilgiris, and even in very important subjects. Both have handled electricity, energy as a topic. We have Sandeep, who's now producing green tea or decarbonized green tea, right? And then we have Dr. Thomas Gavi from the World Design Organization. So I think we'll kind of take it from where Dr. Mukund left. I think he brought in wonderfully the perspective of what are the potential opportunities that is in front of us to solve some of the significant climate challenges that is in front of us. I think he articulated well about the technology that is in place, that needs to get in place for us to innovate more faster, use more startups, and also some very inspiring stories from companies that have taken leadership. He presented the Unilever case as an example, and he also talked about the economic value unlocking of enterprises if they become sustainable. I think he presented the stock exchange rating for green companies, and he also spoke a little bit about the green finance and the options that is in front of us as well. So I think given that envelope that is in front of us, what are your thoughts? And maybe I will start with Mr. Hansraj Verma. We have spoken a lot about energy, we have spoken a lot about efficiency, we have spoken a lot about hydrogen, electrification, and many other things actually. One of the less spoken, more potential opportunity in front of us is about biodiversity. Biodiversity has really come to life during COVID. Nature was healing for more than 2.5 years. And I think all of us saw a significant change in the air quality index when we went through COVID. So I think I will now turn it to Mr. Hansraj Verma, who has actually done some amazing work on biodiversity. And maybe you can come in with your perspective, how biodiversity can significantly contribute to sustainable growth. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ravi. I'll focus on biodiversity and conservation. Friends, we are in the Nilgiris biosphere, one of the biodiversity hotspots. You have to recall the words of late Mr. B.N. Yugandhar, father of Satyam Nadella, who was member of the Planning Commission. That time I used to be Secretary Planning and Development. He always tell us, Western Ghats and Nilgiris biosphere is sacred geography. Preserve it. This is the last bastion of the forest domain in India, which will sustain this biosphere with the borders of Karnataka, Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Now, as Secretary Planning, I had given a vision to the Planning Development Department, which is now framed and kept in the office. I had gone to the old office today. I'll just share that vision given by me in 2008. I'll just read out for you. The vision goes this way. To make Nilgiri the world leader among the hill areas in the implementation of sustainable schemes for socio-economic development, preservation of biodiversity, restoration of hill ecology through meaningful participation of the stakeholders and the community. Now, friends, there are two examples. I work as the advisor CR for the TVS Motors. I am also the Director General of the COSI-DC, which is the Confederation of the State Finance Corporations and State National Corporations, which have about a lakh of MSMEs as members. First, the big corporate. The example of TVS Motors in keeping 30% of their area in the Hosur plant and Mysore for biodiversity and native species conservation. Today, through rewilding efforts, that area is like a forest. And for that, we are applying for the OECM status. This is a new concept of the National Biodiversity Authority. Other effective conservation measures where private sector can also keep aside a portion of their factory land or any land, do rewilding, do native species, do biodiversity conservation, and apply for the status. With this status, it's a competitive advantage the group gets. We have TVS example in Hosur. We have the mangroves in Mumbai in the Godrej group. So for the corporates to take these initiatives and go for OECM status for their conservation measures is a very good competitive strategy. As Mukund was mentioning, sustainability is no longer an option for us. Sustainability is an imperative for business competitive advantage. And sustainability in the BRSR or any other code, one key aspect is biodiversity. Friends, as Arun Mehra was mentioning, India is going to have a problem of water. India better watch out in yesterday's session. And Nilgiri ecosystem with its original wetlands, the Korograss systems, today they got impacted. Ravi was mentioning, he Googled the perplexity and found what is the issue with Nilgiri biosphere? The devastation of the wetlands. So if we want to retain this biosphere in its original space and give to next generation in the better shape, we need to focus on biodiversity conservation. Here, the Kunming-Montreal Global Framework Convention comes into play. Like the COP for carbon and climate change, we have regular COPs for the biodiversity. The last COP was in Colombia. And before this COP, this framework has been put in place where there are 23 targets. In the 23 targets, water is a very important target, restoration of degraded lands, and the most important thing for Nilgiri biosphere is invasive alien species. Friends, during the tea break or the lunch time, you will see 3 elephants outside, the lantern elephants. 40% of the protected areas in India are under threat cover of invasive alien species of lantana, senna. The great silent valley today is a huge threat of senna. Those trees grow very fast, they colonize the local native species. So collectively, all the stakeholders, whether it is the corporate, academia, civil society, government, we have to come together for combating this invasive alien species on a war footing basis. Lantana, several options are there. Involve the community. One option is lantana furniture or handicraft like these elephants, which we find in the Bangalore airport, or make briquettes out of them. Donate to the forest department on board. For senna, it's like a big tree with yellow flowers. Looks very good, but it's a very, very toxic alien species. Talks are on with the newspaper print companies like Sesha Paper Board, TNPL. Can you take this tree for your pulp purposes there? So invasive alien species is going to be a very, very challenge on which all corporates have to come and play. Now the other dimension I was mentioning is my role as DG COSI-DC. We are interacting with all the MSCs on a pan-India basis, sensitizing them that you have to build sustainability in business models. The state finance corporations, when they lend the money like the banks, ask for sustainability. We educate them on the emerging threats like CBAM. And a more important threat, European Union is given, as you have heard of that, is European Union deregulation, forest regulation rules. Any product sourced from a destroyed forest, if it is sourced, will involve an additional tariff or tax. If India has to be competitive, then as Ravi was mentioning, the scope standards, the supply chain. Whether it's the carbon footprint or the issues with the vendors, 80% is supply chain, and of which the majority are the MSMEs. So both the corporates and the MSMEs have to come together and work on this. Friends, please take time to read the book taken out by TVS Motors, The Painted Stock. It tells the saga of the conservation rewilding at the Hosur plant with the caption, Man, Machine, manufacturing, and sustainability. So in all the sustainable measures, apart from the other measures for reducing carbon footprint, energy efficiency, we need to focus on biodiversity conservation. Over to you, Ravi.
Thank you, Mr. Verma. I think one of the potential opportunities, I've seen even companies like Saint-Gobain, I think Unni is here, they have built, forests inside their plant in Sri Perumbudur. So there's a lot of opportunities to not only look at, the examples that you quoted. I think each company can really look at what is that they can do with the land that they have and really grow a lot of native trees. Miyawaki forests are a wonderful technology that, in fact, I was introduced to by late Mr. Vikram Kirloskar, and we have actually 2 Miyawaki forests in our factory, and also I also have seen them, some of them in Saint-Gobain as well, actually. So biodiversity clearly is a potential opportunity, and there's a lot of green funding is coming for biodiversity plants as well. Thank you for that thoughts. I think let me move on to Mr. Vikram Kapoor for your opening remarks on what should we be doing to lead India sustainably.
Thank you, Ravi. Good evening to all of you. I'm sure most of you are aware that under the auspices of the United Nations, following the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs, the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals, framework was adopted in 2015 for the period up to 2030. And for those who have been following on this particular these goals, you may be aware that countries have committed themselves to achievement of these goals by breaking these goals into targets, and the targets further to be measured in terms of indicators. So as far as India is concerned, the government of India, right from the beginning, has been adopting what is called the SDG index, which was brought out by Niti Aayog, I think for the first time in the year 2018. And thereafter, I think now the 4th index has been released, which essentially tries to rate the various states in terms of their achievements of sustainable development goals and targets by measurement of certain indicators. Of course, all the indicators that are listed in the SDG framework are not taken up for this index, but quite a number are there. Without going into the details, I'd like to mention that there are no surprises that the state of Kerala always ranks as the best state in terms of sustainability on this index. And happy to say that Tamil Nadu has climbed up from the 3rd to the 2nd spot over the years. But at the same time, if you go deeper into the various goals, it's found that there are certain targets, there are certain indicators on which even these so-called developed states are not performing so well. Just to give an example, it was quite a surprise that in terms of water, which is so essential for a state like Tamil Nadu, the amount of water that is treated, the wastewater that's treated, is abysmally low. We still need to go a long way in terms of treating our wastewater. But there are some green shoots. Over the years, for example, in Chennai, there has been this initiative where wastewater has been treated and supplied to industries for consumption, and therefore enabling those industries to also contribute towards the reduction in the carbon footprint. The Metro Water, Chennai, which I had the opportunity to lead at some point of time, also prides itself in not just supplying this kind of water, almost 100 million liters a day, to industries. It also has this unique kind of achievement that most of its energy that is consumed for running its sewage treatment plants is actually generated out of the methane that is generated out of these processes. Practically 90% of all its energy is green. So there are examples within government of how sustainable practices can be developed and in partnership with industry can be taken forward. Ravi, we've always taken this view, and of course, my senior colleague, Mr. Hansraj Verma, he was there in the planning department. I also followed in his footsteps in the same department. And we rigorously took up this approach of trying to internalize sustainable development goals within all organs of the government. So the idea was that it should not be some kind of an esoteric concept, but it should be internalized within all departments with a whole of government approach. But very soon we realized that government cannot do things on its own and that it needs partnerships, something which Mukund also referred to. So there needs to be collaboration and partnerships between government and civil society, with corporates, with NGOs. And so we developed this thing called a whole of society approach, where everyone needs to contribute as citizens to achieving the SDG goals. And when we say whole of society, it needs to go down to the last level, to the last gram panchayat. It's touching upon what yesterday we discussed. I think Mr. Mehra mentioned about, that we need to adopt all stakeholders. Now, to do that, it's very heartening to know that right from Government of India down to the state governments, similar kind of indices have been developed, something called the Gram Panchayat Development Index. And if you look at the index there, the Gram Panchayat is expected to measure its performance in terms of a lot of sustainable development goals, defined indicators in terms of health, education, poverty, and so on and so forth. So therefore, this whole thing about taking the concept of sustainability need not just rest in government or in boardrooms or on factory shop floors. It needs to go down to the last panchayat and the last municipality, to everyone, because it has to be a whole of society approach. Finally, I'd like to say that a lot of thought leaders have said that sustainability makes good business sense. Of course, as we were hearing in the previous, the speaker, and Ravi, you mentioned that, if it doesn't make, good business sense, a lot of people have doubts about adopting sustainable practices. But then there is a lot of other evidence to show in literature that good sustainable practices make good business sense. And you yourself showed, the slides that were shown by Mr. Mukund about how, those companies which follow ESG practices tend to actually realize more value from the market. And I would also go ahead and say that it makes good business sense not just for corporates alone, but as well as for government. So I'll rest at that. Thank you. Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Vikram. I think you touched upon a very interesting topic on how we can even build from the government sustainable solutions. And the example that you mentioned about Coimbatore, not many know in the room, probably some of you know about it. Coimbatore is a water treatment plant, and it is completely carbon positive, which means he mentioned about the way technology has been used in Coimbatore. And it's one of the iconic examples in India of a water treatment plant, a sewage treatment plant being completely carbon positive. They have used the energy that's come from the waste as well and made that plant more carbon positive. So I think that was also done under your chairmanship. So I think a big visionary leadership is needed in order to create those kind of pilots as well. Now I have to really stop for a moment because Mr. Verma has a flight to catch, and my apologies that I have to hand over a bouquet to him, and then he can run away, and then we can continue the momento. Yeah. So thank you for that. The panel is still sustainable. Yeah. So now let me move on to Dr. Thomas. So Thomas, you are heading the World Design Organization. And when products are really conceived, even before they are put into the marketplace, there's a lot of material usage. And when we use materials, we ignore the planetary boundaries, right? And also, I think Dr. Mukund touched about the extended producer's responsibility, the life cycle of that product. How do we make sure that they live and offer services to the consumer which is sustainable during its life cycle, right? So, with those three core key aspects for sustainability, through your lenses leading the World Design Organization, what are your thoughts on embedding these core principles into the world of sustainability?
Thank you very much. If I can step back just for a moment.
Sure.
First of all, to say what a pleasure it is to be here, to be in this important event with such a group of esteemed colleagues. I'm only here for a very short time, as you know. The World Design Organization was founded in 1957 as the International Council of Societies of Industrial Design. We are now 225 members representing 500,000 designers in the world today across 40 countries and 5 pillars. We are the only NGO in design that represents the professional sector, the promotional, the academic, and municipal. So the work you're doing here is of deep interest to us. We happen to be in India at the moment because we're launching a major project with the city of Bangalore for 5 years to look at how design is having a positive impact on the life of citizens. This is an extension of our World Design Capital program. We're also having a board meeting next week here in Ahmedabad. So this has provided me with a chance to move around the country, meet our members, talk to municipalities, governments, people that are interested in working with us, to talk about these kinds of things. And I would say, going back to the previous to last speaker rather, who was asked about his confidence in the energy sector and can India lead the way in the world, and he said, I'm very optimistic. I would say we're more optimistic about design leading the world in design-led innovation. We now work to promote, advocate design-led innovation around the world. We recognize, though, that right now, within our world, something is happening. There's a tremendous shift of gravity in the potential and the power of design and where it is in the world. We were largely Eurocentric in our early days. We expanded then to the Americas. And we're looking around the world now, and we know that within the field of design and the areas of the world where design potential is going to be most applied, we relate to changes in demographics, in culture, and in technology. And if I was to invest in a place in the world where design is going to lead the way in a sustainable manner, it would be in India. In terms of demographics, you've got one of the largest young populations of designers being trained. I understand you have about 2,300 design institutions in this country, graduating annually 100,000 designers coming to the workforce. This is a country where technology is a natural extension of everything you do, like none other. And then cultural diversity. We know that design has to rise above its foundations of manufacturing and production to systems level thinking. And when you look at systems level thinking, you look for places where there is complexity, where there is interdisciplinarity. And if I were to look around the world, I'd say, we believe that India's rich heritage, cultural diversity, its empowerment of technology, and its large young demographic means that something is going to happen here that's very important. So we want to be part of that. In terms of sustainability, I was interested in the question on biodiversity because I like to make an analogy of design in a similar way to biodiversity. Biodiversity and nature evolves and by a process of trial and error. Design is very similar. We have a lot of bad ideas before we find a good idea sometimes. And the idea is the faster you try ideas, the faster you fail, the faster you can find what works and succeed. And so when you have a situation here, like in India, where you have so many people trying so many things so quickly, just evolutionarily, you're going to find the quicker and better solutions sooner than in other places. So in terms of sustainability, I think we sometimes mistake the idea of sustainability as trying to not to do harm, as opposed to doing good. If we simply focus on good design, on how we affect people's lives, their experiences, quality of life, and their impact on the natural environment, we will actually be more sustainable. So I think sustainability is a natural product of good design.
Thank you, Doctor. I'll come back to you once again with something around design thinking and how India can lead the world in design thinking, because I think there's a lot of human capital that is there. Maybe I'll come back to that later. And let me move on to Sandeep. Sandeep, you are running one of the largest tea gardens in the Nilgiris. Tell us something about what are the sustainable practices that Craigmore plantations are embracing over the last many years, and what is your vision for Nilgiris, especially given tea, as you heard from Mr. Hansraj, that tea is also a great opportunity for us to do it in the right way. And somebody else, I think Mr. Ramakrishnan was saying that pH value of the soil and the challenges that tea has to the soil is also a complex discussion right now. So please share us your thoughts on what you are doing at Craigmore.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here in front of such an august gathering. We are talking about sustainability here and about circulating the entire, closing the loop on circular economy. Now, as tea industry, we haven't really reached there, but I think there is a huge potential to do so. But before I move on to that, I would just like to say a few things about the tea industry, especially since we are here in Nilgiris, which is the largest tea growing district in South India and which is known to be the best quality growing region of tea in South India. Now, I'm sure I won't be wrong if I say that tea is probably the favorite drink for most Indians. In fact, after water, this is the next most consumed beverage in the country. The consumption of tea is something like 1 billion or 1.1 billion kilos a year in India. And our production is somewhere between 1.2 to 1.3 billion kilos a year. Now, till about 2005, India was the largest producer of tea in the world. And after 2005, China overtook us. And now, from being the largest producers, we are the second largest by a far, far distance. China has more than doubled its production compared to us. The future of the tea industry and of the economy is quite interlinked in many ways, because what happens is, as far as we are producing more, we are able to export. We get foreign exchange. We provide a lot of employment to a huge number of people in the country. We were talking yesterday about how the unemployment levels are at the highest in the country right now. Today we spoke about climate change. I think somewhere we mentioned earlier that the last year was the hottest year on record. And in fact, January 2025 has been the hottest month on record, which has just come out. So this actually brings us back to the requirement for sustainability in the tea industry, because being such a large stakeholder, we can't afford for it to slip up on this important target. Now, there are various ways of doing it. We are doing it, and if I can talk, many responsible companies and across regions are doing adopting a lot of sustainable farming methods. You can do so by various ways. You can do so by reducing your pesticide consumption. Now, how do you do that? To reduce pesticide consumption, you need to improve the biodiversity. Now, we spoke about invasives a little earlier. Now, that's actually a huge challenge. Now, as tea plantations or tea gardens, we have, most tea estates are large. And there is a lot of land which is under tea estates where you have issues with invasives. These are also forest areas where you have a lot of invasives that are taken over. Some sort of degradation takes place over a period of time. It's quite natural. So it's very, very important to systematically remove the invasives and also try and plant, a lot of native species and all that. Now, that's something which can be done. It's also very, very important to manage water very judiciously, because water is becoming a huge challenge. Watershed management becomes very, very important. We no longer see moderate climatic conditions at all. We either see extreme drought, or we see extreme rainfall, extreme heat waves. And in fact, there was a study done some years ago which says that by about 2030, there are many parts of country where tea is being produced now, which will no longer be fit for producing tea profitably. It's going to really put a lot of pressure on that. So that actually makes watershed management all the more important. So there's a lot of work which can be done using a lot of native techniques which were there many, many years ago when people planted tea here, but then later on somehow it got forgotten. And also with the use of new technology, things like even AI. There's a lot which can be done with soil management, with watershed management. Soil cover is very, very important. There's a lot of biomass which gets produced in the tea industry. It can be converted to biochar. It can be used to, make your soils much more fertile and more. It sort of improves the structure of soil. So there are a whole lot of things which are being done and which can be done. I mean, we have a long way to go, I'm sure. But the elephant in the room is what we spoke a little earlier, that these are all very good goals to have, and these are very important goals to have, and which must be, worked upon. But the elephant in the room is who pays for all of this? Because like sustainability comes at a cost. When you do all these things, and in a society or in an industry which actually has a huge social responsibility also. Tea plantations are like townships. There are people, there are generations who stay here, who born here, who live here. People go to schools. You provide them free education, free medical facilities. There's a huge amount of social costs which come along with it. So every responsible tea producer would like to do these things which I mentioned and many more. But the point is, it all comes at a cost, and I think it's very important for everyone. Right from the producers to the consumers to people who packet teas, everyone to understand that if we want a planet which is much better, we want an environment which is for the future, and we've got long-term targets, and we also have to be prepared to pay for some of these things rather than just doing lip service. So, does that answer your question? Or
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you touched upon a very important topic on watershed management. And at CII we did a study on the Sri Perumbudur belt very recently. And the study threw up some interesting learnings. If you look at the 100 square kilometer area of Sri Perumbudur, the GDP that geography generates for India in exports is about $60 billion. 90% of the water that is used for agriculture is being pumped underground. There is industry, there is livelihood, and there's agriculture. The hardest challenge is how do we govern a watershed, right? I know, Mr. Kapoor, you have been in the water sector as well, handled these things. So what is your recipe? Like, for example, Sandeep touched about managing Nilgiris tea gardens using a watershed model. And if we need to pick that model and look at the map of India, and especially where are all the red dots flashing or red lights flashing, probably Elon Musk knows it already through Starlink, but we are probably used to find out how do we do that. So what is your recipe for a watershed model if India has to fix the water challenge?
That's a tough question. So I don't have ready answers. I can only share some of my experiences. We are today sitting in a district which is one of the most ecologically sensitive districts in the country. It has its own challenges, and as I speak now, there are reports of a lot of churn happening within society as to what should be the right development model. And the matter has even been escalated to courts, and you have experts also weighing in. So the conundrum is that should development be at the cost of the environment, of biodiversity? There are legitimate needs of the population of, let's say, a district like Nilgiris. But in the process, should we sacrifice the ecological concerns raised by many? So it's always a tough balancing act. There have been attempts in the past. Even currently, I believe the master plan for the district is being prepared, the new master plan. And I hope that when that exercise happens, it will be consultative. So you need to engage with all stakeholders. Again, going back to what Mr. Mehra kept saying, you have to involve everyone. It cannot be just a document prepared by some planners or by some administrators or some politicians. It has to be a people's document. And only if you hear all the voices and then come out with a balanced master plan, can you then balance the development goals with those of balancing the environment. I would like to narrate to you my experience as I've been in Chennai for a good part. I've been I've headed the Urban Development Authority. I've been a municipal commissioner. I've seen the worst of floods that happened in Chennai in 2015. I handled those. Chennai is again one of the major cities of the country, and this now applies to practically all urban sectors. Rapidly urbanizing, the whole of India is seeing a rapid growth in urban populations, and it's a matter of time before most of the population will be in urban areas. Already the economy of the country, estimated almost 70% would be coming from the urban areas. Sriperumbudur, although largely rural, but it's part of the larger Chennai metropolitan region. So it's very complex that when you design a regional plan or a master plan for such areas, there are going to be competing forces. So on the one hand, you have agriculture, the farmers, their interests, their need to have sustained water. On the other, you have industries, as are available in the Sriperumbudur belt, as you mentioned, which have their own needs. They generate a huge amount of economic growth. They provide jobs. How do you balance their interest? And then in the process, what do you do to the environment? We've seen how mismanagement of water bodies can lead to devastation in terms of floods with bouts of drought, and that causes its own economic and social losses. So it's a very complex situation. Watershed management cannot be viewed merely from a technical point of view. Nilgiris, for example, is a classic case where the erstwhile Western Ghat development program used to be implemented. And the approach was a watershed approach where all departments of the government were supposed to kind of take the watershed in its totality and dovetail all their activities so that they synergize with each other. And after spending crores of rupees over several decades, we still are grappling with these issues. By this time, I think the amount of money that has been spent under those programs, we should have had some great results. But we still are talking about deforestation in terms of water scarcity, in terms of economic difficulties for the people. So the traditional approach of watershed development, as we know, is no longer valid. It has to be firmly embedded into the overall planning process, economic development, environmental development of a particular region. And this would apply equally to all parts of the country with all its diversity. So I wouldn't like to give any shortcut answers, but I'd like to say that if we need to do a good job at balancing developmental and environmental interests, we need to start at the grassroots to look at the entire planning process, involve the community, involve public representatives, involve businesses, big, small, all stakeholders, NGOs, government, corporates, and come out with a mutually agreeable kind of a model of development. I'll stop at that, please.
So that's very nicely put. It's a little bit like listen, learn to learn, and govern. And I think you really summed it up very well. Before I open it up for Q&A, I'll go to Dr. Thomas. So Thomas, what is your ambition, or where do you see India leading the world when it comes to design?
I thought you were asking me about design thinking.
Of course, that's the one, yeah.
Design thinking is such an interesting term. As a designer and growing up and being educated, I thought we were just thinking. But suddenly in the 1990s, people became interested in what we did. Somehow we were having an impact and they started to study us. It was the business schools. The business schools came up with the term design thinking. And what was nice about that was it was suddenly a beginning of an awareness of what we do, how we do in a larger context. We talked about collaboration in every sense. We know now that we can't succeed with anything without collaboration, involvement of the community, involvement of everybody. And it's that term design thinking, it's that awareness of what actually is happening within the design process that is allowing us to have better communications. Another analogy would be if you imagine even 30 years ago, if I were to have a heart attack in a public place, it could be a library or a shopping mall, I might be close to dying. Today, there's a defibrillator in every mall. There's a defibrillator in every library, and people are taught to use them, every school. And now if I have a heart attack, I'm likely to survive. To me, that's the design thinking. That's that capacity to have a positive impact, to have positive increases in slight survival. However, when I want to have heart surgery, I think I'd rather have a surgeon.
Yeah.
So we should never forget when we work interdisciplinarily that we have to bring our own expertise to the table. And so my expertise as a designer is not design thinking, it's design. And the ability to discuss design thinking with the engineer, the city planner, the government official is where we have that language that brings us all together. I'm not sure how design thinking is actually being developed, how widely, let's say, in India. But again, my optimism comes back to the characteristics I mentioned before, and the fact that one thing I didn't mention was when I talked about changing demographics, technology, cultural diversity, all the things we know lead to better systems thinking, I forgot to mention at scale. And so the whole point about the optimism in India is that it happens at scale. And except for China, which is the other place where we see great places for opportunity, nowhere in the world are we doing this at scale like we are in India.
Yep. I think that's probably true because there's a lot of factors on interplay when it comes to India compared to many other geographies of the world. Design thinking is probably more prevalent in the software industry in India. So probably we need to solve sustainability, we probably need a system thinking instead of design thinking. Great. So let me open it up for some questions. We need some volunteers to pass the mic. I think first Kalpana, I think you can go ahead. No. You can go ahead. Your mic is coming. Yeah. Your mic is behind you.
Question is, I'm just supplementing what Vikram said. You was asking what makes for a good watershed. And then you use this, that red lights flashing. So are the danger spots, is that the way we pick a watershed? That no, these are the most dangerous hotspots, and so we'll put all our efforts there. No, the approach is slightly different. You look at what will make a good watershed. So you look at what is potentially a good watershed or what can become a good watershed. So top three things, top of my mind, you look at geography. It should actually be physically a watershed. So there should be a slope or several slopes into
natural,
water.
Yeah.
There should be a natural, the contour should be such that water flows. So that is the first criterion, so to say. Not hard and fast. It could be otherwise. The second is there should be a potential for vegetation. It may be arid today. There may be no growth at all. But there's the possibility of vegetation there, either before or it is still possible even now. So that is the second thing you look for. And the third thing you look for is habitat. It is not uninhabited area. Not to say there have been good watersheds in Rajasthan, desert area, but generally look for habitat because the very important criterion which Vikram pointed out, the importance of the community and the importance of having ancillary activities like animal husbandry. You grow grass, then you need cattle to feed off that grass, and then that has an economic relevance to the community. So the third important thing is habitat. So these are the top three things I can think of. So we don't go into the dangerous spots and then it's not a war. You look at potentially good locations and then select a watershed and then put your efforts in there. So just wanted to supplement.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Gopal.
Can I ask a question? It's a bit naive. I've spent all my life in the corporate sector. I've never been in the civil services and so on. You know, you have said that Nilgiris is one of the most delicate spots, ecosystems in India. Second, you have said listening to people through design thinking. Third, you have talked about design as a holistic system solution rather than piecemeal. You have officers, civil servants of various descriptions all over the district. If I think of Nilgiris district as a company, which may be a flawed description because it's far more complex than just a company, I would assume that the managing director, the board, and so on will be able to implement listening. Now, today, after 75 years, we are saying we must listen to people. I'm not very clear on this. You could say a little bit more. I'm asking out of ignorance, so forgive me.
Actually, it's not a bad analogy. I mean, if you were to start thinking in those terms that, an administrative unit is a company, what would the board or how would the CEO achieve the objectives? But before that, I think it needs to be clear what the objective of that company would be. So in a business case, obviously profits is the main motive, giving maximum return to the shareholder. Using the same analogy, what would be the objective of the, let's say, the district administration? Like you have shareholders in a company, the common people who elect the public representatives and who pay for the salaries of bureaucrats like me, the shareholders are the common people. Obviously, to them, there is a different kind of dividend that I need to give. So that would be in terms of the quality of life, in terms of better opportunities, jobs, income to sustain their family, have a peaceful life, safe, secure. Now, from that perspective, there is accountability of the CEO to provide those services, and obviously there is a cost to those services, so therefore you collect taxes from them in order to give those services. There is, over the years, the way the whole our constitutional structure is, where you have a central government, a state, and then the third tier of governance, it was expected that when once in 5 years we vote for our public representatives or the governments that govern us, either at the panchayat or at the state or central level, that they would give us the best value for money and give me the dividend that I expect as a shareholder, as a citizen shareholder. I personally feel that the track record of our polity has been that we are not giving the best dividend to our people, that they are not getting the best value for their vote. In their case, it's basically an expectation that they would get good services. So I think we need to go back to the basics to find out how you can build in more accountability of the elected board, in this case the public representatives, or the appointed executives, in which case the officials who run the government, how to make them more accountable to the stakeholders. And that's where I came from, that with whatever plans are made, like the master plan, or for that matter, the the various developmental plans, the various schemes that are announced by the government from time to time. The assumption is just because I've elected somebody, so they have a right to come out with any schemes and impose any kind of taxes on me. But I still feel that we need to go back and still engage with the community, even when, let's say, you're preparing a master plan for a region or a district or a planning area. There has to be more intensive consultation to hear voices and just not leave it to bureaucrats or experts or politicians to decide their fate.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's a brilliant panel. And your last answer to Gopal just makes me sing. Thank you. Thank you. But before that was a question, and you raised it, Ravi, by saying design and systems. And I got quite intrigued. And Dr. Garvey, you asked about what is the state of design thinking in India. And I think recently I was given an account of the 250th design school that has been opened in India. And at that design school, a person who was the founder of the National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad was invited to receive sort of an honor for promoting the design movement. And he said this to me. He said at this design school, they were showing pictures of how design is a great opportunity for businesses and small enterprises in India. They were showing pictures of the wedding of Mr. Ambani's son
with all the dresses worn and all the great designs that were being used as an opportunity. So this gentleman, Mr. Chatterjee said, he said, look, design has got captured with this idea of attractive products, whereas to the point is it was supposed to be about a product integrated into a larger system, and it's got lost a bit. So I'm glad you're here and reviewing it. I think we need to be concerned about the quality of the design systems thinking rather than the number of design institutions. To systems thinking, you know, we've been asking this question, can India lead in lifestyles for the environment? Vaclav Smil, systems thinking, I think, the world's best environmental scientist, the Canadian Czech scientist. He's done a masterful book called How the World Really Works. And he says there are 4 systems that are contributing the most to the carbon in the atmosphere. One of them is, we've heard about 3 of them already. Okay. The transportation system, then we got the steel production system, and the cement production system. He takes away the transportation and says actually it's the steel and etc. and plastics. So he said they're plastics, basic stuff, steel, cement, and the food system. And in the food system, it's a complex system with water management, soil management, food production, and supply chains, and plastic, steel, and so on. And he says, making a picture of how the world can solve this problem, he says you need to have 50% of the people of any country living in rural areas. You need to have many small farms with mixed production, not large-scale agriculture. So think about it, India's already there. And we are chasing to get more urbanization, more large-scale production in agriculture. So Ravi, it's just a question of rethinking. What is the solution? And rather than chasing the wrong solution, aren't we?
I think you have actually brought up a very important topic. You know, like I've been working a lot on cold chain in India for a very, very long time. But it's quite difficult to fix the nexus between food, energy, and water. And unless we bring a systemic thinking of how we are going to solve all the 3 in a more sustainable manner, it's very, very hard for us to really have a lot more out of our agriculture, as an example. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. 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 Absolutely, absolutely. That's a great, great input. Thank you. Yes, please.
You made an important distinction between the quantitative and the qualitative, and you said, well, let's not worry about the numbers, let's worry about the quality. I think we have to worry about both. Statistically alone, the more we do, the more likely we're going to succeed. And in terms of education, these 100,000 designers, not all of them will be capable of or interested in becoming systems thinkers. The example you gave of the beauty of the wedding dress is a great example. We were founded originally on aesthetics, form, function, ergonomics, long before we started to become systems thinkers. So this is an evolution of our profession, but that foundation is still there. So the challenge now is how do you maintain the foundation, do that while also becoming a higher level thinker? And so within our vast diversity of student population and therefore now designer population, the more we have, the better likelihood we are to be able to hit all those targets. Coming back to the question earlier, I heard a few times about the cost of this and saying, well, if it costs this much, would we pay for it? The expensive steel was the example you gave.
Cadbury's.
Yeah. And so the question was, well, who's going to pay for it? And my thought at the same time was, if we don't do it, who's going to pay for it?
Exactly. It's a question of what kind of planet we want to leave for our next generation. Yeah. I think there's one question before I come to you, Sridhar. Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Hello. You can use this.
There's a mic behind you.
Thank you. Hello. Thanks for your deliberations. Question to Mr. Vikram Thakur. You mentioned about businesses should come together in creating the sustainability management. I quote James Temple, Chief Sustainability Officer of PwC Canada, who said that that many of the corporate sustainability officers find the most often pursue the quickest and the safest way of cleaning up their emission footprint and trying to make it as zero, rather than pursuing reliable ways of cleaning it up that matters to the real world. Coupled with that, financial sustainability is one of the crucial factors to maintain the ESG sustainability. So how do we track this with respect to companies in terms of financial sustainability, regulatory provisions, voluntary reporting? It seems to be a very long and complex way. So your thoughts on that?
You want me to?
I think he's asking you.
I know, but I thought you would ask a business leader like Mr. Ravi. I don't think I'm very qualified to answer that because I really don't know how companies, what their internal dynamics are. But I also heard voices in this seminar before, which said, one said, I think somebody mentioned that, I think it was Dr. Mantek Singh Ahluwalia who mentioned that perhaps you can't have the same organization which is expected to be policed from within. And then, that somebody mentioned that you should have an external regulator, and which is why all these regulations have happened. I personally believe that although I sit on the other side of the fence in the government, and normally any bureaucrat would love regulation, it's my belief that the more you regulate, the more problems you create, you add to the cost of delivering any product or service. And therefore, I personally would not like a regulatory framework. It may be a soft regulation, but not a very hard regulation which really adds cost to the company for compliances, one. Second, I think companies themselves have to realize that there is value in taking up sustainable processes. If there is no value, there is no point in taking it up, because at the end of the day, businesses survive for generating profit and value to shareholders. But stepping back a bit, you see, companies cannot survive in a vacuum or in isolation. They are part of a larger society. While they provide some goods and services to society, it's also the society that gives its resources to it, whether it's in terms of natural resources or manpower. So therefore, there is a responsibility for the company to look at those external stakeholders. So you need not be only concerned about your internal stakeholders, your shareholders, your board of directors, but also the external stakeholders, which is the society at large, because you owe it to them. Now, it's very difficult to quantify that in monetary terms, but I think this is a point which I think Dr. Thomas also mentioned towards the end, if you had noticed his remark. If we don't pay for it, who will? And I think Ravi also indirectly hinted, it's the future generations that are going to pay for it. So any unsustainable practices are ultimately going to be paid for by our future generations, by the society at large. So I think if companies start understanding that they cannot survive if societies fail, I think then they will start incorporating those processes within. Thank you.
Good. Next, Sridhar.
Can I just ask?
Yeah, sorry.
Basically to Vikram and to Dr. Thomas. I'm actually a resident of the Nilgiris. So when you're speaking about master plan, it's very sad actually when you say it should be consulted and the locals also need to be consulted. The previous master plans that have come out, there's been absolutely no consultation, right? Number two, now when we go in and see, so I chose to come back and spend my time here and try to make something out of this district. I think Nilgiris is the only district which has a reverse migration between the age group of 20 and 50. I think that needs to be addressed also, where if you look at it, you have schools where a lot of people are coming below 20, and then there are a lot of people who are retiring out here. And when you talk about sustainable practices and you talk about people saying, you know, it is a very sensitive area, it's very unfortunate that people come, build, and then they start to trump. So we have multiple issues with that. And add it with the population that's coming in, everything, if you look at on, because of Instagram and social media, now what is actually tom-tommed is when your roads are jammed where you have to be there on the road for an hour. So I've been actually advocating to say, you know, what is the capacity building exercise that you can do? What can we take? How do we actually control? But even this business, I'm an agriculturist, I also am in hospitality. I do understand that it's required, but how do you actually come up with a solution of design and come up with a sustainable practice for the district that actually helps people per se for age groups, let's say 0 right up till 70 or 80? Yeah, that's
Anyone else want to go for it?
Sorry, but this is becoming
So
a monologue of
It's a
sorts.
Vikram-focused panel, you know.
I'm sorry, but...
You're in the right corner, by the way.
Okay, you had me cornered. Actually, I fully agree with you. I think this is a very, very important subject. Cannot be left to a set of, you know, some planners or bureaucrats and all to come out with such key things as a plan for the district, because there's so many, you know, stakeholders who need to be heard. But that's the problem with our, you know, the system that we've, you know, inherited, that we seem to kind of think that we know best and, you know, the others just are in the margins. Discussing about the master plan for Nilgiris will take a separate seminar by itself. But you are spot on that there are developments that are happening, like you mentioned, reverse migration, and then there are, you know, because this district, for example, survives either on tea, which, of course, my friend from Craigmore, you know, I mean, they are really contributing to the economy. So are small farmers like you know, who are contributing. I've been in the tea board for 5 years. I lived in this district, and I know the pain that they have gone through during the early part of this century. But the solutions were found by the farmers and by the manufacturers themselves. And if I may mention, I think if you've been around for that time, the district came out of this crisis because it realized that it needed to be competitive, that its quality was not good, and if you made good quality teas, they would sell. And I think Mr. Sidhu will agree with me that the market today does reward quality, and therefore it was the farmers themselves, and we worked with them. We went village to village, hatti to hatti, and initially there was some resistance, but later on we found a lot of support. And at the end, it's the people who find a solution. They found that, yes, we need to improve our agricultural practices, our manufacturing practices, the way we produce. And there was a clear demarcation after some time where good quality teas were getting good prices. Absolutely. And for me, that was, you know, a vindication of the fact that you need to take everyone together. The other thing somebody mentioned about, I think, the health of, you know, our soil, our water. There was a seminal study done by Upasi, I think, on the health of soils in the Nilgiris. I don't know whether the document is available. And it's been shown that because of this monoculture of tea plantation over the several decades, of the past decades, and use of a lot of pesticides and other chemicals, the soils have become very acidic. Yeah. And the organic content has actually come down, and the water retention capacity of these soils have reduced. Therefore, you have to increasingly, you know, go in for more and more application of, you know, chemical fertilizers and yes, and you know, plantations costs have gone up, and therefore, you know, it's no longer sustainable really to you know, do. I'm very surprised that plantations like Craigmore are still surviving. From a business point of view, the ROI on their investment is something I'd rather put the money in a bank than, you know, run a business like that. But what I want to say is, apart from tea, which always fluctuates in terms of its fortunes, tourism is a very important, factor in the economy of this district. I would like to compare our situation with Sri Lanka, which exactly has these twin pillars on its economy, for its economic growth. One, tea, and other, tourism. You just have to visit there to see how they are managing. And although they are called a developing country, but there are a lot of lessons to be learned how they have managed the tea crisis. Today, Sri Lanka continues to produce some of the most cracking teas. And tourism, although there was a dip because of the law and order issue earlier, it's again rebounding back. I think people who visited Sri Lanka have seen, how welcoming, tourists are, how attractive it is as a tourist destination. So I think there are lessons we can learn from, across the pond and see whether we can build in those kind of practices into our district's growth. Thank you.
Thank you. Even though you were cornered, you did wonderfully well. And I think he needs a big applause for his fantastic answer. I just got a note from the organizing committee that it's getting dark, it's getting cold. And there's tea ready and coffee ready. And there's going to be round tables very soon. So the last question, I think, no, not to you, right? Sridhar, you have a last question, quick fire question, and then I think Archana, you had a question. Aarti, you had a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks to you for moderating excellently for last 3 hours continuously. One of the things is we have been speaking of many things, but being a academic or a prof working with corporates on visioning and mission exercises, here we have Mr. Sandhu, who is handling the last mile laborers, government officials with team at last mile people. What is the vision exercise or mission exercise that we should ensure that everybody, whatever we are speaking for last 3 hours, how does it get into the ground level and reality? And they are also taking up the vision at the serious level, what we are speaking, and it becomes easy. What is the take or what should we do?
That's one of the questions in the round table, and let's try and solve that. Yeah. I think Aarti, to you, the last question. Yeah, you can just grab the mic. Yeah.
Anyway, my voice is loud.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm coming back to you, Mr. Vikram. Yeah, no, you just spoke about tourism, since I'm also from the Nilgiris, right? It's not a boon to an extent, I would say, because we are also killing nature, and so many homestays are kind of coming up. Nobody is really planting trees or any of those things. How do you really tackle that issue? I mean, if there's a combination of both, it's going to be helping the society. At the same time, it is going to be killing the ecosystem. So how do you really kind of tackle the situation?
I think before he answers, I'll try to answer that.
Okay,
so
sure.
That
Yeah.
I'll ease him up, actually. Why is Bhutan the most happy place? And what has Bhutan done on its tourism, which is something we can learn from, actually? There's a lot of lessons from Bhutan, actually. And I think one, they have had a system thinking on the nature, and it is coming from the community. So I think collectively, the Nilgiri community has to decide, whom do you want to have as guests, right? Commercial exploitation cannot be fixed by the government only. It's a collective responsibility. We need a system thinking. And lastly, SDG 17 says it's all about partnerships. Partnerships is one of the most fundamental sustainable development goals, which is under-leveraged in India. And this is something that tourism can benefit out of it. That was my short answer. Over to you.
I think he's summed it up very well. I just want to add that there are many more examples across the world where responsible tourism is happening. And we just need to kind of study those and try to learn lessons from them.
With that note, I think it was a very interesting session. But I just would summarize in one word or one sentence. It's all about partnerships. It's all about system thinking. And it's also about dovetailing design thinking into system thinking. And I think this is something that will leave us with a better future, at a better planet, so that we leave behind a better planet to our next generation. Thank you very much. Yeah.